Welcome to Dead Zones, Oxygen Demand Overload, an integrated technology lesson for ninth grade high school biology. The lesson was prepared for the Lincoln Way West Science Department biology classes. A typical class contains about 30 mostly white middle-class English proficient students. The students are friendly towards one another and work collaboratively during the learning process. There are a few students with individualized educational plans for dysgraphia, dyslexia, and anxiety disorders. This lesson has been aligned to the Next Generation Science Standards. The Next Generation Science Standards take a three-pronged approach to any lesson. In that approach, students engage with content and cross-cutting concepts by engaging in science and engineering practices. Science and engineering practices that apply to this lesson include asking questions, developing and using models, planning and carrying out investigations, collecting and analyzing data, constructing well-reasoned, evidence-based arguments, and obtaining, evaluating, and communicating information. The content that will be covered as the students engage with these practices include photosynthesis, the process where light energy is converted to stored chemical energy within the chloroplast of plant cells. Cell respiration, the process whereby food molecules are broken down to create usable chemical energy for cells in the mitochondria of both plant and animal cells. Photosynthesis and cell respiration are complementary processes that drive the existence of life on the planet. Since these are local and global processes, the topic is approached from a systems perspective in terms of modeling the flow of energy and matter within and between ecosystems. The inquiry teaching model is the most appropriate strategy for planning this lesson, as it will afford students the opportunity to question, plan, predict, investigate, record and report findings, and reflect on what was learned. A variety of technologies have been selected for use throughout the lesson. Some of the technologies in the list shared here are linked to external sites where you can learn more about the particular technology item. A YouTube clip, WebQuest, and online simulation will be used to hook students and develop an awareness and understanding of the global problem of dead zones, as well as the biology concepts that apply to the problem. In the Lincoln Way District, each student has a Microsoft Office 365 account and has access to OneNote class notebooks, Microsoft Excel, and Microsoft PowerPoint, among other applications. The OneNote class notebooks will provide a platform in which students can create, share, and evaluate documents and findings within and between teams. Additionally, both student and teacher-generated lesson artifacts can be easily accessed and downloaded by students with dysgraphia and dyslexia into apps like Snap and Read and Read and Write for Google. Additionally, organizing lesson resources into the OneNote class notebook will allow for differentiation and students to progress at a pace appropriate for the individual. In the assessment portions of the lesson, students will be creating PowerPoints and infographics that will require some narration. Encouraging the use of Screencast-O-Matic and Voki will alleviate issues that students with anxiety disorders might have with presenting in front of a group of peers. Finally, Part of the final assessment will require students to create an infographic that integrates what was learned throughout the lesson. Students will have a choice of online platforms for creating this infographic. Such online platforms include Venngage, Infogram, Canva, and Visme. This calendar summarizes the sequence for this particular lesson. As noted earlier, the students will begin with viewing a YouTube clip titled Dead Zones, a Global Problem, followed by investigation of a web quest about the Gulf of Mexico dead zone. Throughout, student engagement with this YouTube clip and web quest will be class discussion about what is being learned at the time. Student learning from the web quest and YouTube clip will be related to cell respiration and photosynthesis through an online simulation about the cell energy cycle. To be sure that students are making the connection between the cell energy cycle and dead zones, the students will be asked to generate models of a cell energy cycle occurring among living and non-living components in the Gulf of Mexico dead zone. Algae are a key player in the formation of dead zones and also undergo photosynthesis and cell respiration. Students will investigate this through an experiment using algae beads. The core experiment is a structured inquiry designed to introduce students to how algae use light for photosynthesis and then carry out cell respiration at nighttime. Following the core experiment, the students will engage in a guided inquiry where they can test either the effect of light intensity or temperature as it might exist in the Gulf of Mexico on the processes of photosynthesis and cell respiration as performed by the algae. Students will use Microsoft Excel to analyze data collected during both inquiry labs and then use that analyzed data in audio-supported presentations about their investigations. Those presentations will be peer-reviewed and discussed in class, and then that discussion, feedback, and peer review will apply. Students will be able to apply that in designing the infographic at the end of the lesson. Within the calendar, different activities have been linked so that you can explore them more. Also at the top of the slide is a link to the student overview handout that the students would receive for this lesson. In the assessment portion of this lesson, there will be both formative and summative components. The formative component will consist of assessing student understanding through a lesson pretest, as well as teacher observation and journaling about class discussions, student engagement during activities, and a student end-of-lesson survey. The hyperlink on this slide for formative will take you to the example of that student survey. Summative assessment will occur through a post-test assessment as well as performance-based rubrics. Those performance-based rubrics will be used to assess things like the student models, the student use of inquiry skills, the student presentations, and the student infographics. Clicking on the summative link will allow you to view the different performance-based rubrics that have been created for this lesson. In conclusion, the design of this lesson has implemented the SAMR model. The original version of this lesson relied heavily on text readings and written reports. Through the application of the SAMR model, this lesson has substituted interactive online resources for the traditional text readings, modified the written reports to become multimedia presentations, and redefined traditional summative assessment with the infographic requiring students to integrate text, visuals, video, quantitative expression, and hyperlinks.